What is the dopamine detox book about? What are the main takeaways of the book? In Dopamine Detox, Thibaut Muris claims that if your mind feels scattered and distracted, it might be time for a dopamine detox. He further explores the science of dopamine and what causes sensory overload in the brain. Dopamine Detox by Thibaut Muris. In the Dopamine Detox book, Thibaut Muris argues that all of us suffer from a constant state of sensory overload that robs us of our focus and our ability to meet our full potential. The culprit dopamine, the neurotransmitter released in anticipation of a pleasurable activity. To reclaim your focus, Muris advocates for the power of a dopamine detox, the intentional elimination of activities that trigger dopamine and lead to sensory overload. He argues that by removing activities that trigger dopamine, you have the power to reclaim your capacity for the deep focus necessary to accomplish your long-term goals and dreams. Thibaut Muris is a personal development coach and founder of the website What is Personal Development? In addition to hosting his own YouTube channel, Muris has published over 20 self-improvement books. Dopamine Detox is the first book in Muris's 4-part productivity series. Understanding dopamine. Dopamine is a naturally occurring chemical often described as the pleasure chemical, but, according to Muris, this is a common misunderstanding. He explains that dopamine is the chemical cue for reward-seeking behavior. It's the neurotransmitter that motivates you to seek out pleasurable experiences, not the chemical that causes you to feel pleasure. Dopamine has played a critical role in human evolution, motivating people to focus their energy on pleasurable activities necessary for survival and reproduction, like eating food or having sex. However, Muris argues that dopamine no longer offers the same evolutionary benefit that it once did. The modern world is a media-saturated environment, full of passive entertainment, like social media or video games, which constantly trigger dopamine, offering minimal benefit and leading to sensory overload. The dark side of dopamine. Muris explains that in the modern world, companies use dopamine as a tool to steal your focus. As a consumer, your attention equals money, so companies like TikTok or Instagram are constantly competing for that attention. As you scroll through social media, the anticipation of receiving likes, comments, and other forms of social validation activates the reward centers in your brain, releasing dopamine. When you receive positive feedback, your brain associates the experience with pleasure and reinforces your desire to seek out more of it. This creates a cycle of reward-seeking behavior that can become addictive and prevent you from focusing on more important tasks. The problem is that constantly seeking the next sensory input leads to sensory overload, which prevents you from focusing on the work that matters most. When you anticipate a pleasurable activity, dopamine is released. As more dopamine is released, your body needs an increased level of sensory input to release the same amount of dopamine. The impact, according to Muris, is that you're left constantly looking for the next sensory input. Overstimulated, you become easily bored by low-stimulation activities, like focused work, and incapable of the deep focus necessary to accomplish your long-term goals. The dopamine detox. Muris argues that the solution is a dopamine detox. A dopamine detox is the intentional elimination of activities that trigger dopamine to decrease sensory overload. This helps you regain control of your focus so you can spend your time on your most meaningful tasks. Muris acknowledges that the term dopamine detox is a misnomer because it suggests that the problem is an overabundance of dopamine. In reality, he explains, the problem is that when you're overloaded by external stimuli, the brain requires an increasing amount of sensory input to release the same amount of dopamine, so you're no longer able to feel engaged or stimulated by the everyday meaningful tasks necessary to accomplish your long-term goals. Muris outlines 2 models for a detox, the total detox and the limited detox. The total detox. The total, or complete, detox requires you to remove all dopamine-inducing behaviors for 24 or 48 hours. Muris argues that this detox will reduce your level of stimulation. The following activities are examples of dopamine-inducing behaviors to eliminate during your detox: browsing the internet, watching TV or movies, listening to music, using your phone, scrolling through social media, consuming drugs or alcohol, eating sugar or highly processed foods, and over-exercising. Muris recommends engaging instead in low-stimulation activities like journaling, walking, gentle stretching, or meditation.